There were three troublemakers who strolled into a Summit Ridge diner. A Navy SEAL was located instead. A criminal enterprise would be brought to its knees, a billion-dollar weapons smuggling scheme exposed, and the Black Scorpion's motorcycle gang would learn a harsh lesson from what happened next. There are times when the reserved woman sipping her coffee in the corner poses the greatest threat. Misunderstood, they believed they were frightening a single woman. But instead, they decided to engage in combat with one of the United States' deadliest veterans. What follows is the account of how a group of motorcyclists made their worst and ultimately fatal error when they crossed paths with an inappropriate female Navy SEAL. Please identify your viewing location before we go ahead with the narrative. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe so that you don't miss tomorrow's unique story. Commander Eleanor Carter watched the steam rise in languid spirals as she stirred her coffee in Sullivan's diner, enjoying the deep shadows formed by the afternoon sun. The fact that absolutely nothing ever happened in this little Summit Ridge hamlet was the exact reason she had picked it. All she wanted after 15 years of military operations and missions that would never be remembered was peace and quiet. The owner of the cafe, Martha Sullivan, who had silver hair, came over carrying a new pot of coffee. "You don't look that exhausted, my darling," she said as she topped off Elle's drink. Elle was reminded of her own grandma by her kind grin. "One of those days," Elle said to Emma, while subconsciously massaging the Navy SEAL tattoo that was partially visible under her leather jacket sleeve. The reason the elderly woman sat with her back to the door and the nightmares that still made Elle sweat were mysteries to her. As the tranquil period came to an end, 3 motorbikes smashed into the parking lot, their motors intentionally rattling the windows of the cafe. As a result, the other customers stiffened up and abruptly stopped talking. A smirk slipped Emma's lips as she clenched the coffee pot even more firmly. It was the arrival of the Black Scorpions. With the gang's signature symbol displayed on their leather cuts, Raymond Viper Carter led his 2 lieutenants into the diner. As he looked around the room, Viper's scarred face contorted into a smile that he likely believed was endearing. Before shifting to Emma, his eyes lingered on Elle for an excessive amount of time. Viper yelled out to Emma, "Sweetheart," with an edge to his voice that turned away a few customers. "At yesterday night's town meeting, we regretted missing you." It was a letdown for Mayor Douglas. As she sat down at the coffee pot, Emma's hands quivered a little. "I needed to take inventory, Viper. The situation is familiar to you." "Absolutely," Viper said, drawing nearer. "You know, it's really not optional when the mayor holds a meeting. He is seeking everyone's support as he endeavors to contribute to the growth of this town." His forceful touch on the counter flinched Emma. Forgot about her coffee. Elle calmly observed the exchange. She meticulously recorded every detail. A knife was stashed in the boot of Viper, Viper's right-hand guy. The third motorcyclist, a burly man they dubbed Tank, was caught with a weapon that was not properly concealed beneath his shirt. "Maybe the mayor should stop allowing criminals to dictate policy and focus on running the town," Martha remarked, her voice now louder. The restaurant fell into complete quiet. False grin on Viper's face faded away. He snarled and reached across the counter, demanding to know what the elderly woman had said to him. Before Elle's conscious mind could take control, he moved. As she seized Viper's wrist and applied pinpoint pressure to clusters of nerves, her 15 years of preparation finally paid off, and his fingers spasmed open. Though her voice was barely audible in the otherwise quiet restaurant, she insisted that the mayor carry out his duties. Viper struggled to free itself, but Elle's hold was unyielding. She kept her sights set on Viper, while Viper and Tank maneuvered to flank her. "If you don't release me now, my boys here will make you regret it," Viper growled. Even though Elle grinned, it fell flat on her face. "Are they going to? Because there are 3 options available to you from my vantage point. You and your companions can depart at this point, and we will not remember this incident. Secondly, if you do something foolish, I will have to take all 3 of you to the emergency department." She raised her fingertip pressure just enough to make Viper flinch. "Before you fall to the floor, we determine how many bones I can break." Spit out by Viper, "You have no clue who you're battling." "In fact, I do," Elle said. Dishonorably discharged from the army in the year 19 is Raymond Viper Carter. Recently, you and the Black Scorpions have stepped up your game to include weapons trafficking, in addition to conducting protection rackets throughout 3 states. Has anything been omitted? The expression on Viper's face became lifeless. L's voice abruptly halted Tank in his tracks as he reached for his concealed pistol. The answer is no, I would not. As a beginner, you telegraph your moves and have a sluggish draw. It will be over when you clear the leather. They stood there still for what seemed like an eternity. After that, Viper surrendered by raising his free hand. I get it, we're packing up and heading out, but this is far from finished. As he stepped back to make room for them to leave, L let him go. Whatever you want it to be, it can be. The way Viper rubbed his wrist detracted from the 3 bikers' attempts to appear intimidating, so they retreated. On their way to get on their bikes, Viper threw one final glance out the window. Say my name. As the motorcyclists sped off, Martha uttered a whisper. Returning to her seat, Elle sipped from her iced-over coffee. A person who has witnessed an inordinate amount of bullying throughout their lifetime. One thing was clear to Elle as she watched the Black Scorpions flee down the street. Viper was correct. It wasn't finished yet. She had just made herself an easy target, and if her intelligence was accurate, the weapons trade was only the beginning. Beyond this little Summit Ridge village, the Black Scorpions were a part of something far larger. Martha brought out a new mug of coffee and set an apple pie piece on the table. The elder woman assured you emphatically that you will not be alone no matter what comes next. As her thoughts raced through potential outcomes, Elle gave a subtle nod. Despite her hopes for tranquility, she had to fight for her arrival in this town. If a confrontation was desired by the Black Scorpions, they were about to discover why Navy SEALs were not the ideal adversaries. Yes, Elle silently concurred. It's not just me, just like you, I am not. At least not at the moment. Elle meticulously cleaned her Glock 19 in her cramped apartment above Sullivan's diner that night. She mulled about her next move while replaying the confrontation with the Black Scorpions. As she was lost in thinking, she heard a knock at her door. She shouted out, "Sheriff, it's open," without taking her eyes off her task. Entering, Sheriff Daniel Briggs's worried expression betrayed his age. In a tiny town, rumors can spread quickly. I heard that you were involved with Viper and his henchmen. News to me, Elle said as she put her weapon back together. I just had a cordial conversation with a few rude customers. Seated in a chair across from her, Briggs let out a sigh. Listen up, Winters. Hello, Elle, he corrected Elle. I am familiar with your history. 6 months ago, I did a check when you moved here. 13 years of service as a Special Operations Forces member. I have received numerous commendations for work that is so secret that not even my law enforcement clearance has allowed me to see it. At last, Elle raised an eyebrow and met his eyes. When it happens, you'll see that I'm independent. That is my main concern. These Black Scorpions aren't your average neighborhood gang anymore. They are well-connected, profound ones. My deputy discovered a stash of weaponry last month, enough to equip a small army. The state level issued orders to back down before we could even secure it. It seems like someone is being compensated to turn a blind eye. Briggs lowered his voice and leaned forward. Town hall meetings are presided over by Mayor Douglas at the Black Scorpions clubhouse. A significant portion of the municipal council possesses brand new vehicles that are beyond their means. Elle is my daughter, and she is a teenager. I am so afraid I will die, so you choose to ignore it. It was Elle who completed it for him. I do my best to protect my people from harm. Briggs got to his feet and adjusted his belt. I will not instruct you on what to do. I mean, come on. Use caution. In the Black Scorpions, Viper isn't the true powerhouse. Next week his boss, Leonard Cross, will be in town. Across 3 continents, the man is linked to arms merchants. Elle kept her face expressionless, but her thoughts were all over the place. One of her previous missions with the SEALs had introduced her to the name Cross. 2 of her colleagues had died because the operation had gone wrong. Sheriff, I appreciate the caution. Briggs stopped short of the door as he approached it. Martha Sullivan is an admirable human being, if that matters to you. From the time I was a little girl, this town has had coffee and pie. Describe your day. Someone should have spoken out for her sooner rather than later. Pulling out her phone, Elle dialed a number she hadn't used in months after Briggs departed. The speaker is Jackson. Winters here, Ethan. Do you recall that Baghdad guns dealer we were following? Oh, that elusive one? We wait. That one that led to the deaths of Johnson and Reyes? His supply chain, I believe I have located it. Strangely enough, Summit Ridge. Seriously, Elle, you're meant to be retired. Please only send me official channels from Leonard Cross and the Black Scorpions MC if you have anything to offer me. I prefer not to destroy any of your covert sources. A heavy sigh escaped Ethan's lips. Just give me 48 hours and watch out, Elle. Dealing with Cross solo is not a good idea. Who told you I'm alone myself? A gang of motorcyclists sped past the diner the following morning as Elle helped Martha open it. This time it's not Black Scorpions. A distinct emblem was shown by their leather cuts. The Warriors of Steel. Knox, their enormous commander, grabbed Elle's eye as they marched past. There was acknowledgement. Also another thing, a letter. Is there more difficulty? With a weary voice, Martha inquired. I don't know, Elle said. Something was off with the Iron Vultures. Most of them are ex-military. They were territorial guardians who avoided attacking innocent bystanders. And if Elle was correct, they could be possible friends. Her phone rang. Ethan sent me a text. Information flowing in. I am absolutely your man, Cross. Viper appears incompetent as compared to body count. Locations of facilities housing weapons have been provided. The local intelligence also indicates that Iron Vulture's MC could be your enemy's ally. Armani grinned. Everything was starting to fit together. The morning rush began as the regulars who had been there for yesterday's showdown began to trickle in. With a newfound respect, they nodded to Elle. The word got out. The Black Scorpions had finally been confronted. Deputies Olivia Reyes and Elle's regular Booth were the first to arrive at the scene about midday. Sliding a manila packet over the table, she whispered, "Got something you need to see." So she did. Highway surveillance footage. Something major is afoot with the Black Scorpions. High level of protection. Expert drivers. Not what they normally do. Elle looked over the pictures. Camouflaged as commercial trucks, these vehicles convey military-grade materials. With tactical precision, armed escorts are positioned. On what date? I had a great night. The problem is, they are becoming careless, feeling terrorized. This place and you are under the watchful eye of Viper's minions. However, they are making no secret of it. It was obvious to Elle. Two hopefuls from Black Scorpions had spent the entire morning parked across the street, appearing overly casual. Do you think your supervisor knows you're showing me this? In a grimace, Olivia grinned. Despite being a good man, Daniel is terrified. I am? I've had enough of these cretins destroying our town. Upon my mother's passing, Martha was there for me, providing me with a safe haven to accomplish my schoolwork, as well as warming meals. I've reclaimed her. Similar to you, young deputy was observed by Elle. Her back was as strong as steel. Her eyes were ablaze. One more possible ally. Echoing his warning, Elle urged attention. What if they find out you're assisting me? I am capable of managing my own affairs, and I am not alone in my frustration. Resonating like clockwork, the sound of approaching motorbikes grew louder. The Iron Vultures had returned, and they had pulled into the parking lot of the diner. Knox got off first, his enormous stature dominating the entranceway. He glanced across the room before locking eyes with Elle. Could we possibly join you? With a low, menacing voice, he inquired. Nodding, Elle calmed Olivia's nerves. Emma, who seemed unconcerned by the sudden presence of Knox and three of his officers, slid into the booth with a cup of coffee. I heard you had a disagreement with Viper, Knox remarked after Mar had departed. People often say that men are too quick to retain grudges. Are you here for that purpose? To forewarn me? He let out a laugh. No, lady. We've come here because the Black Scorpions have been sneaking military hardware, the kind that kills people, through our region without our knowledge or consent. And, additionally, we were hoping that a discussion regarding our shared hobbies could pique your curiosity. Leaning back, Elle studied the motorcyclists. Their mannerisms, their bodily position, certainly with a history in the military. Additionally, they made eye contact with her, in contrast to the Black Scorpions. Be respectful. Do not provoke. Pay attention. Olivia, who remained steadfast, caught Knox's eye. Elle asserted clearly that Deputy Reyes remains. Included in this is she. I understand. He leaned forward. Knox. A large shipment will be overseen by Cross. Something of sufficient size to send Viper's followers fleeing in terror. There is information, resources, and drive on our side. We require an operator with experience in this type of operation. A person who has had SEAL training, Elle concluded. I nodded. Knox. The way I see it, you have some vested interests in seeing Cross deposed. Elle's face became more angular. A lot of people talk to you. Military families living in a small town. Word travels quickly. Knox lowered his voice a little. You knew Johnson. The man was decent. Word of her fallen friend floated through the atmosphere. Elle spoke after a little pause. I will have my way if we go with this. Thorough, accurate, methodical, no sloppy work here. I wouldn't change a thing, Commander. The departure of the Iron Vultures caused Olivia to release a suppressed exhalation. Do you really believe this? Through the window, Elle observed the motorcyclists as they climbed up. On the other side of the street, two potential black scorpions were phoning each other like crazy. Yes, she did concede. However, in order to defeat the one you don't know, you sometimes need to cooperate with the devil you do know. Things were starting to shift. Whatever procedure was making Viper so anxious was about to be brought to fruition by Cross. With Olivia as a possible conduit to real law enforcement, the Iron Vultures were on board. Elle only needed a strategy that wouldn't result in everyone's death at this point. As darkness descended upon the sleepy Summit Ridge town, Elle's phone began to ring, signaling the arrival of an encrypted message from Ethan. As soon as she opened the file, she saw detailed satellite imagery of 3 places outside the municipal limits. These were warehouses that were registered to shell firms, but they were obviously being used as storage facilities by Black Scorpions. In the middle of her analysis, she heard a knock at the door. Martha stood there, her expression a mix of nervousness and resolve. A visitor has arrived, Martha whispered, down an obscure alleyway. They claim to be your buddies. After snatching her Glock, Elle trailed Martha down the rear staircase. She discovered Knox, his sergeant-at-arms, and an unexpected visitor, Sheriff Briggs, in the dimly lit alley. Briggs stated without elaboration that we have an issue. Cross isn't simply dropping by for a regular checkup. He intends to permanently relocate his entire operation here. Elle inquired as to the reason, even though she was already making connections. Knox intervened. That's not the true reason, though. The town is ideal because of its isolation, local control, and proximity to state borders. To Elle, he presented a folder. These individuals were seen by our contacts as they arrived at the private airstrip outside of town. Photos from the surveillance footage revealed faces Elle recognized. Those involved in the guns trafficking ring that had been involved in the botched operation in Baghdad. Elle whispered that they used the Black Scorpions to conceal a massive distribution center as part of their consolidation efforts. Further, Briggs said, it gets worse. Tonight, Mayor Douglas has convened a special council meeting. Slashing the police budget by 60% is what they're voting for. Half of my deputies will have to be let go. In the end, Elle said, Olivia too. Everything was fitting together perfectly. Their goal is to eliminate any formal opposition by cleaning the board. Knox grimaced and nodded. 4 days from now, Cross will be here. Extra security is already being put in place by Viper's lads. Their plans, whatever they may be, are massive. Elle re-examined the photographs. They won't be on the lookout for a SEAL squad, but they will anticipate difficulties from law authorities and possibly rival gangs. Briggs corrected the former SEAL. Not at all. Garlick beamed. About half of my staff has served in the Special Forces, Rangers, Marine Reconnaissance, or even the Delta Airlines. We've remained under the radar, pretending to be any ordinary MC, but we're actually quite trained. An eyebrow was arched by Elle. A group of ex-Spec Ops soldiers who ride motorcycles? Knox retorted that someone must protect the helpless. We required someone with your level of expertise to piece together the information we've been collecting on Cross over the past few months. Olivia, who was still wearing her deputy uniform, came out as soon as the back door opened. We're making progress. They have just dispatched 3 Black Scorpions vehicles, which will be making their way to the warehouse district. According to Elle, they are reorganizing their possessions in order to better safeguard their important goods. Turning to Briggs, she spoke. I understand that you're attempting to safeguard your people, but we require official authorization for this, Sheriff. Briggs let out a deep breath. Is this what you had in mind? Olivia and any deputy you have full faith in could do some selective enforcement on my behalf. Anything to halt their progress and collect intelligence, including traffic stops and license checks. Briggs forewarned that they would grieve with Douglas. Permit them to do so. Doing so will cause them to become careless and nervous. At the same time, she looked over at Knox. Your team must immediately begin security stress testing. Just enough to throw them off their trail of confusion, nothing overt. Knox beamed. I got my boys pumped up about possible competitors advancing when we ran a few bikes past their checkpoints earlier, so the race is already underway. Thankfully, they won't be seeking a precision strike. They'll be anticipating gang warfare. Elle retrieved her phone and displayed Ethan's satellite imagery to them. We have 3 days to prepare for the major event. Create a security map and find any weaknesses. Also, what's the big deal? Olivia inquired. We're going to give Cross carte blanche to set up his organization any way he sees fit, including bringing in all of his worldwide relationships and networks, and then, coldly, Elle smiled. We're planning to knock it down in one fell swoop, but there's something missing. Identify it. Briggs inquired. Evidence. Quite enough to skip Douglas and get straight to the federal authorities. Proof so damning that it would send even the most corrupt politicians ducking for safety. Martha Finley spoke something after sitting quietly and listening. I could perhaps lend a hand with that. Since the restaurant has been open for 40 years, it's inevitable that everyone will stop by at some point, and that includes those who believe they are too important to be seen here. And everyone is chatting. The younger Elle now regarded the elder with reverence. Have you been maintaining tabs? Even though I'm only a diner owner, I'm not naive when it comes to names, dates, and discussions. There will come a time when someone had to know the truth about this place. Knox whistled softly. You might be the most menacing individual here, ma'am. Elle told everyone to get back here tomorrow night. Knox, round up your finest. In addition to what Martha has gathered, Sheriff, we will also require any information your deputies are lawfully able to obtain. We only get one chance to do this. Martha lightly patted Elle's arm as they parted ways. You're not merely serving the town's interest, are you? The stakes are high. Concerned about the mission's failure, Elle reflected on her slain teammates. If you really want to succeed, sometimes all it takes is a little extra push from within. Once Elle returned to her apartment, she began to organize the information and formulate a strategy. It had been 3 days in the making, and Cross had no clue he was heading into a trap. While he believed he was expanding his kingdom, in reality, he was walking right into the sights of a sniper. Ethan had sent her a text, and her phone buzzed. Whatever they're up to, it's huge, since the satellite shows even more movement. Stay alert. A brief response was returned by Elle. Don't fret. We're prepared for them this time. Everything was moving. It was now a question of ensuring that everyone did their assigned tasks flawlessly, as the Black Scorpions would discover in 3 days why it is absolutely forbidden to meddle with a Navy SEAL's selected residence. Tensions were high the following morning all across town. Members of the Iron Vultures made their presence known through meticulously planned drive-bys in gang territory, while Olivia and the other trustworthy deputies strategically pulled over Blood Raven's vehicles. Like she sat down at Sullivan's diner, like she always does, Elle saw the heated argument across the street between Viper and 2 of his lieutenants. From a distance, you could see how frustrated they were. Swinging into the booth across from her, Martha casually mentioned that your coffee was going cold. A battered leather notepad was set on the table by her. My research on Douglas and his associates is as follows. A collection of unplanned notes, chats, and meetings spanning a decade. As Elle turned the pages, her face became more serious. Emma, the nexus here goes much beyond the trade in weaponry. They've been using half of the town's businesses as a means of money laundering. I began keeping track for what reason, in your opinion? A wise man once told me that knowledge is power. May his soul rest in peace. After he went away, they began pressuring me to sell the restaurant, and I realized I needed insurance. Their focus was diverted by an uproar outside. As his anger was plainly visible, Viper pushed one of his own soldiers against a wall. The strain was becoming too much for them. Knox had sent a message, and Elle's phone buzzed. "Got the package? Let's meet at the historic mill." Elle informed Martha that he had to go. "Keep your wits about you, because things are about to heat up before they calm down." On the outskirts of town, there was an abandoned lumber mill. The rusting machinery stood as silent sentinels. Inside, Elle discovered Knox and his core squad, as well as an unannounced visitor, a blood-raven prospect who was bound and gagged. Knox said that he had discovered him poking about our region. I thought he could have some intriguing stories to tell. A frightened prospect was approached by Elle. He was one of the younger recruits, and she recognized him. He was barely of drinking age. "Hey there, what's your name?" Following Knox's removal of the gag, Daniel Me stutter-stepped. "Okay, let's discuss the incoming shipment with Cross, Daniel Me." Daniel Me was taken aback. "I am completely ignorant regarding—" "Stop it," Elle interrupted him. "You're supposed to be doing the heavy lifting because you're sporting a prospect cut. You are well versed in loading, unloading, and maintaining watch. Do you want me to tell you those details, or do you think we can come up with anything else?" Gulping, the young guy composed himself. "They are going to murder me." Knox barked at the child. "Do you have any idea what they'll do once they discover you were caught on our turf?" Daniel Me snapped. Words flowed freely. Logistics plans, security shift schedules, and the overall structure of the facility. But it was the last bit of information he gave that really chilled Elle. According to him, they have a list of sorts. Particulars. Names, places. Cross is taking it to heart. The value exceeds that of all the weapons put together, according to Viper. Elle and Knox looked at each other. Every corrupt official on Cross's payroll or entire trafficking networks may be exposed by such a list. Daniel Me chimed up with one last point, his voice quivering. "They are aware that there is an adversary. Extra muscle is what Vipers are known as. Gentlemen, not merely motorcyclists." Once again, Elle's phone beeped. "My name is Olivia." Issue: Douglas has recently placed Briggs on suspension and appointed Viper's brother as the acting sheriff. With a motion toward Daniel Me, Elle instructed Knox to place him in a safe place. One day he could be of service. Upon returning to the eatery, Elle discovered Olivia, Briggs, and Martha all waiting. The ex-sheriff appeared to have lost the battle. According to Briggs, they're making more progress than anticipated. Even though Douglas referred to it as an ordinary administrative review, everyone is aware of the implications. Olivia further by saying that they are ensuring Cross's arrival by consolidating power. By dawn, my badge will likely be worth very little. Elle weighed their alternatives. We had to make some changes to the initial plan. Their official cover had been blown, what with Briggs gone and real law enforcement compromised. Another ding. It was her phone. "Hi, Ethan. Significant motion detected by satellite. Quite a few cars are heading in the direction of where you are. Professional operators, not gang members. Remain vigilant." Just when the diner was about to close, 3 dark SUVs with tinted windows rolled quietly past. Olivia whispered under her breath that they are no longer attempting to be subtle. According to Elle, they aren't necessary. They believe they have the town under their grasp. That boosts their self-assurance. When they're confident, they mess up. Martha saw the SUVs drive away as they rounded the bend. "Our next move? A firm change the plan," was Elle's command. "They anticipate opposition from authorities or other gangs, so we take advantage of their anticipation by striking them in a way they won't expect." "The Iron Vultures?" Briggs inquired again. "A portion of it, but we also have another card at our disposal." Elle retrieved her phone and called Ethan. "Keep in mind the favor you owe me, okay? I require immediate access to satellite coverage, and I am requesting that you initiate some calls. Time to bring some long-dead spirits back to life." Darkness descended upon the village as further black SUVs rolled in. Members of the Black Scorpions and professional mercenaries worked together to establish checkpoints and patrol routes. They were getting ready for battle, but it wasn't going to be the fight they were expecting. Elle briefed her core crew on the updated strategy in Sullivan's Diner's basement. As expected, the Iron Vultures would cause a commotion and grab everyone's attention. The remaining law enforcement contacts would be worked by Olivia and Briggs. Martha may use their insurance policy as proof. The actual procedure, though? Those dark deeds would have been carried out by experts in the impossible. Elle informed them that Cross will be arriving tomorrow with his valuable list and worldwide contacts. He anticipates discovering a town that is entirely under his command. He will, however, learn the hard way that it's not a good idea to underestimate some people. Thunder rumbled over the mountains outside. This little Summit Ridge village was about to be hit by a storm. Nothing would have remained unchanged by the time it ended. There were 3 troublemakers who strolled into a Summit Ridge diner. A Navy SEAL was located instead. A criminal enterprise would be brought to its knees, a billion-dollar weapons smuggling scheme exposed, and the Black Scorpion's motorcycle gang would learn a harsh lesson from what happened next. There are times when the reserved woman sipping her coffee in the corner poses the greatest threat. Misunderstood, they believed they were frightening a single woman. But instead, they decided to engage in combat with one of the United States' deadliest veterans. What follows is the account of how a group of motorcyclists made their worst and ultimately fatal error when they crossed paths with an inappropriate female Navy SEAL. As Commander Eleanor Carter watched the steam rise in languid spirals while stirring her coffee, the afternoon sun cast long shadows throughout Sullivan's Cafe. The fact that absolutely nothing ever happened in this little Summit Ridge hamlet was the exact reason she had picked it. All she wanted, after 15 years of military operations and missions that would never be remembered, was peace and quiet. The owner of the cafe, Martha Sullivan, who had silver hair, came over carrying a new pot of coffee. "You don't look that exhausted, my darling," she said as she topped off Elle's drink. Elle was reminded of her own grandma by her kind grin. "One of those days," Elle said to Emma, while subconsciously massaging the Navy SEAL tattoo that was partially visible under her leather jacket sleeve. The reason the elderly woman sat with her back to the door and the nightmares that still made Elle sweat were mysteries to her. As the tranquil period came to an end, 3 motorbikes smashed into the parking lot, their motors intentionally rattling the windows of the cafe. As a result, the other customers stiffened up and abruptly stopped talking. A smirk slipped Emma's lips as she clenched the coffee pot even more firmly. It was the arrival of the Black Scorpions. With the gang's signature symbol displayed on their leather cuts, Raymond Viper Carter led his 2 lieutenants into the diner. As he looked around the room, Viper's scarred face contorted into a smile that he likely believed was endearing. Before shifting to Emma, his eyes lingered on Elle for an excessive amount of time. Viper yelled out to Emma, "Sweetheart," with an edge to his voice that turned away a few customers. "At yesterday night's town meeting, we regretted missing you. It was a letdown for Mayor Douglas." After setting the coffee pot down, Emma's hands quavered a little. "I needed to take inventory, Viper. The situation is familiar to you." "Absolutely," Viper said, drawing nearer. "You know, it's really not optional when the mayor holds a meeting. This town's growth is his goal, and he needs everyone's support to achieve it." His forceful touch on the counter flinched Emma. "Forgot about her coffee," Elle calmly observed the exchange. She meticulously recorded every detail. A knife was stashed in the boot of Viper, Viper's right-hand guy. The third motorcyclist, a burly man they dubbed Tank, was caught with a weapon that was not properly concealed beneath his shirt. "Maybe the mayor should stop allowing criminals to dictate policy and focus on running the town," Martha remarked, her voice now louder. The restaurant fell into complete quiet. False grin on Viper's face faded away. "Old lady, what were you saying to me just now?" Reaching across the counter, he let out a low growl. Before Elle's conscious mind could take control, he moved. As she seized Viper's wrist and applied pinpoint pressure to clusters of nerves, her 15 years of preparation finally paid off, and his fingers spasmed open. Though her voice was barely audible in the otherwise quiet restaurant, she insisted that the mayor carry out his duties. Viper struggled to free itself, but Elle's hold was unyielding. She kept her sights set on Viper, while Viper and Tank maneuvered to flank her. "If you don't release me now, my boys here will make you regret it," Viper growled. Even though Elle grinned, it fell flat on her face. "Are they going to?" "Because there are 3 options available to you from my vantage point. First, Get out of here with your pals. We won't remember a thing that has transpired. 2. You make a foolish move, and I'll have to take all 3 of you to the emergency department. Viper drew back in pain as she slightly upped the pressure. Before you fall to the floor, we determine how many bones I can break. Spit out by Viper, you have no clue who you're battling. In fact, I do, Elle said. Jim Carter, the Viper. In the year 1909, I received an honorable discharge from the military. Recently, you and the Black Scorpions have stepped up your game to include weapons trafficking in addition to conducting protection rackets throughout 3 states. Has anything been omitted? The expression on Viper's face became lifeless. Elle's voice abruptly halted Tank in his tracks as he reached for his concealed pistol. The answer is, no, I would not. As a beginner, you telegraph your moves and have a sluggish draw. It will be over when you clear the leather. They stood there still for what seemed like an eternity. After that, Viper surrendered by raising his free hand. Okay, we're going to leave. But that's not all. As he stepped back to make room for them to leave, Elle let him go. A possibility exists. It's decision time. The way Viper rubbed his wrist detracted from the 3 bikers' attempts to appear intimidating, so they retreated. On their way to get on their bikes, Viper threw one final glance out the window. Say my name. As the motorcyclists sped off, Martha uttered a whisper. Sitting down again, Elle took a drink of her iced coffee. A person who has witnessed an inordinate amount of bullying throughout their lifetime. One thing was clear to Elle as she watched the Black Scorpions flee down the street. Viper was correct. It wasn't finished yet. She had just made herself an easy target, and if her intelligence was accurate, the weapons trade was only the beginning. Beyond this little Summit Ridge village, the Black Scorpions were a part of something far larger. Martha brought out a new mug of coffee and set an apple pie piece on the table. The elder woman assured you emphatically that you will not be alone no matter what comes next. As her thoughts raced through potential outcomes, Elle gave a subtle nod. Despite her hopes for tranquility, she had to fight for her arrival in this town. If a confrontation was desired by the Black Scorpions, they were about to discover why Navy SEALs were not the ideal adversaries. Yes, Elle silently concurred. Neither you nor I are alone, at least not at the moment. A strange silence descended upon the town as dawn broke. The streets had taken on the appearance of a military occupation due to the heightened security measures implemented by the Black Scorpions. At strategic junctions, armed soldiers in tactical gear stood watch, while black SUVs followed predetermined police patterns. Perched atop her window, Elle witnessed Viper personally directing the installation of surveillance cameras all over Sullivan's diner. Their previous attempts at intimidation were completely exposed. Ethan had sent her a protected message, and her phone vibrated. Positioned as a ghost squad. All 6 operators are past team members. They'll imitate your every move. Pulling at her lips was a smile. With Ethan's help, she was able to contact operators with whom she had prior experience. Men who owed her their lives and were willing to operate covertly without seeking official approval or acknowledgement. Hey there, Commander. Her encrypted radio picked up Knox's voice. The airstrip is showing signs of activity. Just landed are 3 private planes. Evidently, Cross is going to be late. Before the upcoming mission, Elle snatched her gear bag, which contained her carefully selected guns and equipment. Replicate it, keep your distance. Make them feel like they're the only ones on the board. Locals and Black Scorpions members were among those Martha served coffee to below. You could cut the tension in the diner with a knife. Elle glanced over to Martha and nodded subtly. Unhurriedly making her way to the rear, the elderly woman turned the sign on the entrance of the eatery to the closed position before vanishing into her office. Entering through the rear entrance, Olivia persisted in donning her deputy uniform, even though she had been formally suspended. At noon, Douglas has convened a town meeting as an emergency. Everyone who owns a business must be present. Elle stated that they will make their move, totally seize control, using real companies as proxies for their illicit activities. And there's more. Olivia whispered. They have been instructed to completely avoid our jurisdiction, according to my connections at the state police. Under no circumstances will there be a response. Elle looked at the time. Only 40 minutes to go before the town meeting. They needed 4 hours to arrange all of their parts. A crackle escaped her radio. "Hey there, Commander. I'm Ghost One. Cross is our target. Ex-special troops, maybe CIA, are escorting him on his journey. These people are not criminals. Numbers? 11 or more operators, not including Bloodraven's strength. The main compound is their next destination." On her laptop, Elle retrieved the satellite feed that Ethan had supplied. An ostensibly deserted factory on the outskirts of town is the site of the Bloodraven's headquarters, which is being approached by a number of vehicles. "What is your current tally for total hostiles, Knox? Including Viper's new muscle and 20 members of Bloodraven. Incorporate Cross's protection detail. We're estimating at least 40, completely equipped and expertly trained." As a result of Elle's response, the biker commander let out a laugh. Olivia seemed anxious. "The odds are against you. It's a suicide." Elle remarked, "Check your weapons one last time. Numbers don't win fights," and she left. Factors such as time, position, and initiative take the lead. Plus, we have no intention of winning a direct combat. Outside the restaurant, a black SUV drew up. 2 guys in flashy suits emerged from the building and made their way to the exit. Elle mumbled something about being punctual. "Olivia, verify that Briggs is prepared by going to him. In 30 minutes, Knox, start your team's run. Only engage in shadow surveillance, Ghost Team." As they made their way to Emma's office, the suits scanned the practically deserted restaurant. Even with the walls so thin, Elle could make out their words. "Madam Sullivan, you will be escorted to the town meeting early by Mayor Douglas. Modifications to local company restrictions are something he'd like to talk about." Martha spoke with conviction. "I am occupied with inventory, but the meeting won't last for hours." "Excuse me, ma'am, but—" Martha expertly diffused Elle's nervous energy as he prepared to act. "Give me my coat, please." After leaving her office, Martha gave Elle a subtle nod. "I was making good progress with everything. Whatever happened in the following hours would be decisive. This little hamlet was about to become the capital of Cross and his criminal empire's consolidation of power. They possessed the numerical advantage, weaponry, and strategic edge. Knowing who they were truly fighting against was the most important thing they lacked. One last ding went off on Elle's phone. "Hi, Ethan." Another convoy is seen approaching from the north on the satellite, carrying what appears to be weaponry, these hefty vehicles. Whatever they have in mind, it is taking place right now. "Copy that," Elle said. "It is time to demonstrate to them why a SEAL's home is off limits." Her arm extended toward her radio. "We are ready to launch Operation Ghostwalker. All units. Ghostwalker has been given the go-ahead. I repeat, carve out the time allotted." Figures in disguise started to take positions across town. With their engines resonating off the mountains, the Iron Vultures rode up, while 6 expert operators prepared their weapons in the shadows. The Black Scorpions would soon find out that the most menacing predator is often the one you don't anticipate, as the storm eventually broke. Arrivals for Douglas's obligatory meeting caused the town hall's parking lot to fill up rapidly. As armed soldiers in tactical gear patted down all visitors, black SUVs stood guard at the entrance. Leonard Cross inside sat silently behind the mayor's podium and watched the townies come in. Whispering into her radio, Elle, who was observing from a nearby rooftop, sent out a message to all troops. "Leave one in place as a ghost. Watching the armaments convoy is our job. There are 6 vehicles, highly armed security detail. Here's the iron. My sons are prepared to create a commotion." Olivia reaching out. "Our insurance package is prepared for shipment by Briggs." As Viper walked around the town hall, acting as enforcer, Elle observed through her scope. The list that Daniel Me had described was probably in the metal briefcase that was attached to Cross's wrist. Names and details that could bring down trafficking networks across numerous continents. "Phase 1 must be executed," Elle instructed. There was a lightning-fast reaction. The coordinated runs by the Iron Vultures, who rode dozens of motorcycles, buzzed the checkpoints of the Black Scorpions, and diverted security resources from vital locations. Douglas formally opened the assembly within the town hall. "We gathered here today to share in the excitement of some upcoming changes to our neighborhood with our friends and neighbors." He was about to finish when the power went out in the building. As mutters of confusion swept across the audience, the emergency lights went out. "Do you know the power station's Ghost 2 status?" Main and backup power sources turned off. They are solely powered by backup generators at the moment. As he whispered to Viper, Cross leaned forward. The gang boss wasted no time in ordering his men to fortify the perimeter. Ghost Squad Phase 2 assaulted the caravan. The weapons package detonated in a flurry of activity miles away. Strategically placed explosives neutralized the two leading trucks and ensnared the others. As they moved ghostly into the forest, highly experienced operators attacked the professional security detail from behind. In a report from Ghost 1, the convoy was neutralized. Minimal harm done, all enemies neutralized. Through his earpiece, Cross received the news, and his composed demeanor momentarily crumbled. As if getting ready to flee, he signaled to his personal security detail. "Not yet," L muttered. "Allow the pressure to develop on them." In a last-ditch effort, Douglas tried to keep the meeting under his authority. "Everyone, please, keep your cool." Here for a little while. Boom. The sound of explosions interrupted him. The Iron Vultures had started their attack on Bloodraven's weapon depots all throughout town, utilizing Daniel Mee's intelligence to target the correct spots. "What is the Iron status?" "They are rushing to react as you predicted, even though 3 warehouses are on fire." Without warning, Cross rose to his feet and his bodyguards advanced to encircle him. He continued to wear the briefcase securely on his wrist. "Get ready for Phase 3, everyone. The Ghost Squad, get ready too." An unexpected sight halted L's commands. In the midst of the town hall gathering, Martha Sullivan had stood up. In a forceful announcement, the proprietor of the eatery made his point. Viper approached her. "Please, don't stand up. This is not the place for you to speak." Martha said no, her voice resonating with clarity in the room. "I feel like the timing is perfect." She retrieved her battered notepad. "Here are the records. The exact times, dates, and amounts of every meeting, deal, and bribe." "Would you like me to begin reading, Mayor Douglas?" A flush spread over the mayor's face. In light of this emerging danger, Cross's countenance deepened. L ordered the ghost team to hold their position. "Initially this wasn't intended, but now we'll just have to watch how it unfolds." "So you believe that our small notebook poses a threat?" Sneering, Viper extended his hand toward Emma. At that point, Olivia and Briggs took action. Not only did both ex-cops stand, but so did a number of other locals. As individuals got up from their seats, creating a barrier between Martha and the Black Scorpions, the room dynamic changed. "Yeah, sure." For the first time, Cross spoke, and his voice was icy and calculated. "There appears to be some local resistance that has to be addressed." "Show me an example, Viper." Viper drew his weapon while grinning. But the instruction L had been waiting to give finally came from her before he could do anything. "Ghost Squad, carry out the 3rd phase. Move them eastward, Iron. The town hall is where all units will assemble." There was exact planning behind the mayhem that broke out. Just as L had planned, the Spectral Squad came out of hiding and launched a coordinated assault, harming Cross's security detail. As covert agents managed the escape routes, the Iron Vultures advanced from the west. As she sat on her perch, Elle saw everything come together. Despite their numerical and weaponry advantages, Cross and his men were responding to an unseen strategy, battling phantoms as the actual danger loomed on the horizon. "We must ensure that Cross remains alive and that briefcase is protected." She communicated this information to all units. "All other considerations are secondary." As the final phase was about to commence, Elle slung her weapon over her shoulder and readied herself to directly join the battle as thunder roared across the mountains. Because getting right down to brass tacks isn't always an option. As Cross's security detail surrounded him in a protective circle, mayhem broke out within the town hall. The sound of additional distant explosions overwhelmed Viper's attempts to issue commands. Status of the ghost team. Elle gave the order and dashed quickly toward the building from her vantage point. They are encircled, with both the east and west entrances protected. Looking out the window, Elle noticed that the townsfolk were encircling Emma while Olivia and Briggs commanded their own corner of the audience. The town had finally mustered the guts to oppose. "In your opinion, does this have any impact?" As he spoke to the audience, Cross's voice sliced through the din. "It is my town. With just one phone call, I can summon the National Guard and declare a riot has broken out." Do you all support the idea of your neighbors being killed by military forces? There was a crackling sound coming from Elle's radio. Here at Commander Ethan's location, we have just overheard Cross attempting to rally military support via the false allegation of domestic terrorism. Not going down, Elle said. Run the Echo protocol. Everything in the building went dark all of a sudden. As he glanced at his useless equipment, Cross's expression of astonishment was amusing. What's going on? Viper made a demand. An individual from Cross's security detail informed us that they own a tactical jammer, expert quality. The placid exterior of Cross eventually crumbled. Raid this place for me. Right now. With the help of Blood Raven's members as a barrier, his security detail started making their way to the back door. However, dense white clouds were filled the room as they neared the door as smoke grenades shattered the windows. As Elle retrieved her night vision goggles, she gave the command for all ranks to engage. Several locations were simultaneously breached by the Ghost crew. Amidst the mayhem and haze, the elite security detail of Cross was engaged in combat with an invisible, uncommunicable, and impassable foe. Like a ghost, Elle stalked through the smoke, her every step calculated and deadly. As she methodically neutralized threats and advanced toward Cross, her years of SEAL training kicked in. No, really. Despite Mayor Douglas's best efforts, he was eventually forced to confront Briggs. Is it a trip? Asking, the ex-sheriff then punched him till he passed out. Viper drew his weapon and shot aimlessly into the haze. You cowards, get out there and fight! His companion Elle's voice echoed from behind. Be cautious with your desires. A blow from Elle struck Viper in the kneecap, just as he was about to pivot. His weapon was thrown aside as he collapsed from a second strike. As the smoke began to disperse, the gang leader collapsed to his knees and stared up at Elle. She told him he should have left Martha alone before knocking him out. As the Ghost team's pinpoint attacks took a toll on his security detail, Cross began to withdraw. He remained bound to the briefcase. Dear Commander, the radio carried the voice of Knox. The perimeter is under our control. Across town, black scorpions are giving themselves up. Remain focused, Elle said. Our main objective is to Cross. The gun salesman, seeing that he was out of options, anxiously glanced around. By remaining firm, his final 2 security detailmen bought him precious seconds to retrieve a tiny gadget from his pocket. Deadman's switch is in Ghost 3's possession. Coldly, Cross grinned. Take a step back or I'll let it all go. Complete list of names and operations supplied to all major news outlets. If your colleagues' operators were to have their covers blown, how many would die? With her sights set on him, Elle stepped out of the haze. Before you can even press the button, you will be dead. Perhaps, Cross conceded. Is the number of lives you're willing to sacrifice sufficient? Yes, Commander Winters, I do recall Baghdad. Then you were helpless to rescue your squad. Presently, is it truly worth it to put more lives at danger? As soon as Baghdad was brought up, Elle's finger clenched on the trigger. A single gunshot, though, cut them both off in their tracks. With surgical accuracy, the device was fired from Cross's hand, causing him to scream. Ghost 2, that was a nice shot, Elle remarked as he advanced on Cross. Thank you very much, Commander. Finally, Cross's composure crumbled as he cradled his wounded hand. What you've done is beyond your comprehension. Elle interrupted him and took the suitcase from his wrist. The people I work for were about to face even worse challenges. Ethan, are you the one that can access the data? Yes, definitely. A member of the Ghost team's technical staff has completed the drive cloning process. We have all the goods. When the haze lifted, everything became obvious. On the floor, members of Blood Raven and Cross's security detail were bound together by zip ties. Olivia and Briggs were apprehending the other crooked government officials, including Douglas. Among her fellow townspeople, Martha stood with pride, her notebook of proof still grasped tightly. Ghost crew, fasten the shipment straps. Ensure that we haven't overlooked any surprises by sweeping the town Knox. Olivia Briggs, I have a feeling that this bag contains information that multiple federal agencies will find highly intriguing. Standing on the floor, Cross shot her an icy stare. This is far from done. Coldly, Elle smiled. It is. You simply have no idea about it yet. As federal authorities who had been notified by Ethan's crew started to arrive, the sound of approaching helicopters could be heard. The town was finally emerging from its protracted nightmare. However, Elle realized he was correct about one thing when she witnessed Cross being brought away in handcuffs. Consequences would follow. Who exactly would they be up against was the big issue. The town hall was encircled by federal officers who were gathering evidence and questioning suspects. As Elle stood by, he observed the loading of Cross and Viper into separate vans. No longer could the spectral squad be felt. They had vanished into thin air. With 2 cups of coffee in tow from her cafe, Martha approached. She handed one to Elle and suggested he use it because he might need it. Ultimately, you had a hand in the downfall of a global arms dealer in my hometown. Elle answered, "Thank you for the evidence. It was a big help." He then sipped from his cup. Many people will be put in their place by those notebooks. Cold War hero? A towering woman with an FBI jacket drew near. "Yours truly, Special Agent Rodriguez. We must talk about what transpired here." Without a doubt, Elle looked over at Emma. "Will that coffee be rained out?" Martha nodded in agreement. "You deserve free coffee forever, my darling, because of all you accomplished for our community." Rodriguez and 2 other federal agents sat across from Elle in a temporary command center set up in the sheriff's office. There was a message from Ethan that made her phone ring. Encrypted data. Teams from around the world are making progress towards their goals. That was excellent. And thus Rodriguez started. "How about we break up the biggest weapons trafficking network we've been after for years?" It involved a diner owner, a motorcycle gang, and a former Navy SEAL. As soon as Elle started to reply, Knox walked into the room. He removed his motorcycle club attire and put on a suit, which only served to heighten his menacing appearance. He then produced a badge and declared, "That's where I come in." Shaw, Special Agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Organized Crime Division. Operation under wraps, running for 3 years. Behind her composed facade, Elle was absolutely taken aback. Knox, also known as Shaw, hadn't merely been going along with her scheme. He was the boss of his own show. She inquired about the Iron Vultures. "Most of them are ex-military people who are now contractors for the federal government," Shaw said. "For a long time, we tried to establish evidence that would lead to Cross's conviction, but we were never successful." Rodriguez grinned, "Which gave you the perfect chance to set the trap, and then you showed there and began making havoc. However, the other operators' roles intrigue me. The ones that have gone unnoticed, apparently. Who else?" With an innocent tone, Elle responded, "A large number of courageous citizens of the community recently rose up to defend themselves." Shaw forced a smile to remain hidden. "There were times when the monitoring gear just wouldn't work. Very unfortunate." The town outside was reviving. Based on information found in Cross's briefcase, members of Blood Raven were being apprehended throughout 3 states. Olivia had recently been named temporary sheriff with Briggs as her advisor, and Mayor Douglas and his corrupt officials were facing federal prosecution. Once again, Elle's phone beeped. "Ghost One has something to say. The shipment has been successfully delivered. Information conveyed. Team breaking up. Thank you for the hunt." Rodriguez mentioned that while going over her notes, she is still bothered by one item. Baghdad was brought up by Cross. "Do you want to fill me in on that?" "Top secret." Both Elle and Shaw spoke at the same time. After glancing between them, Rodriguez let out a sigh. "Can you believe it? I prefer not to be informed." Upstairs, the brass is pleased. "We have sufficient proof to permanently detain Cross." Surprisingly, no one was injured. It's a win in my book. Elle returned to Sullivan's Diner as the FBI agents completed their preliminary inquiry. The town's residents were out in full force to celebrate their independence. At the counter, Olivia and Briggs waited for Martha to bring out her renowned apple pie. Alongside her, Shaw stumbled into step. "We really work well together, you know. Not knowing you were an FBI agent would have been fantastic," Elle said. "Might have jeopardized a 3-year operation." In any case, he beamed. "You also failed to promote your backup squad." "Which team exactly?" "I see." They remained silent as they strolled for a while. "As a consultant, your skill set is always in demand by the Bureau. I am done with that existence, thank you. This town has become my home, but is it really? Reason being, I have learned of 3 additional trafficking networks in Summit Ridge. It appears to be the type of thing that a small community could require security for." As Elle froze, he studied Shaw's countenance. So, are you trying to get my assistance or give me a job? Perhaps it's both. You are the kind of specialist that the Iron Vultures could benefit from. Legally, we're no different from any other MC. Informally anyway? Curiously, he shrugged. Someone has to look out for the common man, I guess. Her phone rang once more before Elle could answer. According to recent information, Cross's associates are getting back together. Ethan could be on their way to exact revenge on you. Armani grinned. Maybe we'll have to put off retirement for a bit longer. Shall I consider it? She told Shaw. Changes came quickly to the little Summit Ridge community in the days that followed. The story of how a little village brought down an international weapons trafficking gang was being covered by news vans, while federal officials continued analyzing evidence. As Elle sat in Sullivan's diner, he watched CNN report about the arrest of Cross. Martha refilled Elle's coffee and remarked, "They're calling you a hero, though they don't know the half of it," as the news anchor avoided discussing the enigmatic operators and tactical teams in favor of the courageous local resistance headed by a former Navy SEAL. Elle said it wasn't necessary. Some things are better off kept out of the spotlight. Olivia had sent her a text, and her phone lighted up. "It is crucial that we meet at Briggs's residence." Elle was surprised to see Special Agent Rodriguez, Olivia, and Shaw in Briggs's living room 20 minutes after she arrived. Rodriguez started without introducing the topic at hand. "We have an issue." The Cross spoke. Shaw bent over. He gave them what? Not only did he divulge names and contact information, but he also allegedly exposed the existence of Project Echo, a black book detailing every arms sale, corrupt official, and covert operation that had taken place over the previous decade. Elle kept her face expressionless, but her thoughts were all over the place. During her time in active duty, she had overheard rumors regarding Echo. Rodriguez went on to say that the briefcase was missing several items. It was really a minor component. As far as Cross is concerned, his associates are transferring the actual database to another location. Tell me where to move it. Olivia inquired. Over here. Images were scattered around the coffee table by Rodriguez. According to satellite images, convoys are approaching from 3 different directions. Not only are these people involved in the criminal underworld, but they have backgrounds in the military, intelligence, and even mercenary work. Shaw was led to believe that Cross's data is still with us. Elle later suggested that they might be seeking vengeance. In any case, they're on their way. Briggs finally raised his voice. For how many? A minimum of 60 operators divided into 3 groups. The crew is competent, well-prepared, and unconcerned with unintended consequences. Olivia seemed anxious. Even now, the town is fighting back. No more fighting, we aren't prepared. Elle got it right. However, we are bound to do this. They will destroy the town if they come here in search of Echo. Shaw looked at the aerial photographs. With activities going against Cross's other assets, my team is stretched thin. It is possible that we can arrive with 10 operators within the allotted time. Who are the specters on the squad? Rodriguez surprised everyone by asking. Gesturing toward them, she grinned. I am not blind. I am an FBI agent. No official report has mentioned who assisted you in taking down Cross, but I know it was someone. Elle expressed her disapproval by shaking her head. They vanished. Embraced once more the darkness. They function in such manner. Then Briggs stated firmly, we'll make do with what we have. Our town is this, we will insist on protecting it. A ringtone could be heard on Elle's phone. Hi Ethan, understood the need for a satellite. 3 armored convoys, time till arrival, 2 days. May I place a few calls for you? Her response was a typed response. Not quite yet, I need to give this a go. Within the group, Elle shared an idea. It will not be to your liking though. Give us a go, Olivia urged. Here, we welcome them. Chacun of them. What they find, how they get here, and where they go are all under our control though. Initially, Shaw understood. Are you planning to lay a trap? The entire village is ensnared in the trap. We turn their presumptions on their heads. We provide them with a target because they are anticipating the discovery of Cross's data. At the same time, using their own strategies against them, we dissect them, Shaw concluded. Rodriguez appeared dubious. It's really ridiculous. What we have here are serial murderers. And I am, too, Elle whispered softly. With home field advantage this time, I'm in a good position. Going to the window, she got to her feet. Cumulus clouds were building over the mountains in the distance. Out in the distance, 3 groups of assassins were making their way toward them, assuming a tiny town would be ill-prepared to meet their approach. The truth about how mistaken they were was about to hit them. Olivia, I'm depending on you to mediate amongst the locals. It is time to depart for everyone who want to do so. Those who remain must be prepared. Get the defense positions mapped out, Briggs. Every nook and cranny, every rooftop and cellar. I intend to learn more about this town than they ever will. Shaw, the Iron Vultures are what I need. Chacun of them. What level of formal support are you able to offer, Rodriguez? The guy from the FBI grinned glumly. In a formal capacity? Not a soul. Informally anyway. Reports of disturbances in this area can be postponed for around 24 hours. That's going to be sufficient. Back to the gang, Elle turned. They've decided to visit our house since they think we'll be easy prey. We will prove to them that they are completely mistaken. The first raindrops fell as thunder roared over the mountains. There were several ways in which the storm was approaching. However, they would be prepared this time. The sleepy Summit Ridge community became a well-planned trap in the span of just one day. As she observed the townsfolk carry out her schemes with military exactitude, Elle stood on the rooftop of Sullivan's Diner. They had set up shop at Emma's Diner. Its cellar was a treasure trove of ammo and supplies. Through the radio, Olivia's voice could be heard, and the East team announced that they are in position. Every single person has been safely evacuated from that area. With the use of her binoculars, Elle observed the town as Shaw's Iron Vultures assumed covert positions. They no longer resembled federal operatives. They looked every inch the rugged bikers they appeared to be, fully immersed in their MC persona. Ethan, I was wondering where we stand with the incoming teams. The leading convoy is going with caution, 20 miles out. Positions 2 and 3 will follow an hour later. They're making preparations to attack from 3 different angles at once. To everyone's surprise, Elle grinned. An surprising new message had arrived on her phone. Ghost One's text read, Commander. Even though the team disbanded, there were 6 operators in the vicinity. Very unofficial. Need a hand? She told them that she had assumed they would never inquire. Briggs's speech sounded choppy on the radio. Look at this, Elle. Briggs set up numerous displays in the sheriff's office to show the feeds from the surveillance cameras. The convoys that were coming were well organized and maneuvered in a tactical fashion. But there was a strangeness. In Briggs's finger, he indicated their weaponry. They're armed with electronic warfare gear and sophisticated breaching devices. Elle knew that they aren't merely seeking retribution. Echo, they believe, is hiding out in this town. But is it really? With caution, Briggs inquired. Nothing was conveyed by Elle's look. Is it important that it be? I would assume not. The screens were examined by Briggs. They will search this entire area for it. Yes, Elle firmly responded. There's no way. A crackle escaped her radio. Ghost One, the team's commander, is ready. Do we have the green light to hire advanced scouts? Elle looked at the clock. The wind was gathering more speed and the storm clouds were darkening. Ideal circumstances for her intended endeavor. Bad news, Spectre. First, give them time to settle in. We're convinced them that they are the ones taking the lead. The enemy's advance teams were initially seen on the town's outskirts. Working in pairs, the operators carefully survey the buildings and alleys. Despite their competence, they failed to recognize the subtle dangers that Elle had concealed. Radio silence is observed by all units unless there is an emergency. Move on to the first stage. Lights started going out in predictable patterns all around town. A complex patchwork of light and shadow was created as power was cut to some blocks while remaining lit to others. As they drew near, the operators would presume casualties from the conflict or hurried defense measures. Unbeknownst to them, every shade was cast on purpose, and every shadowy alleyway was a possible trap. How is our package coming along, Olivia? All set to go. When we want them to, they will discover just what they are seeking. With the right amount of actual data, Elle had constructed a phony echo database that would pass for the genuine thing. The adversary would believe they had succeeded in their objective once they discovered it. At that point, the true trap would set in. Another ding. It was her phone. The big convoys are speeding up, Ethan. They're succumbing to temptation. With sandwiches and coffee in hand, Martha materialized on top of the world, considering them for potential usage. Major event tonight. When the elder woman snorted, "You were supposed to be in the shelter with the others, Emma. Oh, I know this town well. Plus, you can't go hungry until someone feeds you." She couldn't help but smile at Elle. They would win because of this. They were fighting for the sake of their homeland, not because they were more skilled or had more advanced tactics. Another crackle escaped the radio. The second Spectre. "We are making progress, Commander." "Quite a bit. They aren't going to wait until nightfall." The first big wave was rapidly approaching, as Elle could see through her binoculars. Vehicles adjusting their positioning, soldiers forming standard formations for deployment. In their minds, they were preparing for a systematic attack on a little town that had little defenses. Each unit maintains its location. Permit them to delve deeply. Elle rose to her feet and gave her weapons a final inspection. "Do not forget that we are not merely protecting. Here we go again. They came to our house with the assumption that we would be easy targets. What happens when predators turn into prey? Let's find out together." The tempest subsided. The approaching forces were lit by lightning as rain started to fall. Thunder, like cannon fire, rolled over the far mountains. It was going to be an unforgettable night for these operators, if they made it through the impending struggle for the soul of this small summit ridge town, because Elle had every intention of making sure of it. As enemy operatives flooded the streets in the pitch black, the rain grew heavier. Even though their night vision gear boosted their confidence, Elle was aware that it could also be their downfall. Their view was obscured by a computerized verdant haze, but her people were familiar with every shadow. "Can you tell me the status of the dead one?" Subtly, Elle spoke into her radio. "The kill zone is being entered by the first team. Using 4-man cells, 20 operators move. Powerful weaponry, demo gear. Shaw and the Steel Knights are ready, all set to wreak havoc on the mark." With her scope trained on the attackers, Elle observed as their leading element drew near Sullivan's diner. They covered angles and checked corners with ease. Highly competent. Caution is advised. Still expected. "Carry out the second phase," she instructed. The Steel Knights seemed to be frantically evacuating the town as they stomped their motorbikes through the streets throughout town. As expected, the adversary operators divided their forces to assess the new danger. According to Ghost 2, they're splitting up. To meet the motorcycles, a second convoy is advancing. "Olivia, please." Olivia activated the sensors set up in advance while stationed at the sheriff's office. New parts of town went dark, while others were lit up when strategic transformers blew. In the face of constantly shifting lighting conditions, the enemy's night vision gear quickly turned into a liability. Disoriented multiple targets, confirmed 3 ghosts. Off we go to interact. Quiet, suppressed weapon fire hit strategic points in the enemy's command organization first. The Ghost Squad had already dispersed to different locations when they became aware of the impending attack. Her earphone picked up the voice of Commander Ethan. An additional convoy is being held back. Its leader is intelligent. That anything is amiss has dawned on him. "Okay," Elle said. "That's the purpose of the package." Just as the clock was about to strike 12, Olivia sent a flood of encrypted data, the phony Echo database, from somewhere close to the town center. The signal was picked up by the enemy's electronic warfare squad as expected. According to Ghost 1, they're on the move. Every unit is moving toward the point of transmission. Elle beamed a gloomy grin. The third phase involves unrestricted unit execution. Prior to the start of the actual combat, the storm overhead offered ideal cover. Instead of continuing with their decoy run, the Iron Vultures decided to coordinate their attacks on the enemy's vehicles. Any member of the Ghost Squad who attempted to summon reinforcements or take command was promptly eliminated. But the townsfolk were the ones who really made an impact. It was an ambush waiting to happen at the end of every seemingly exiting door. Some defense was hiding in the shadows, and they all knew where to aim their guns. The enemy operators were unable to gain ground or rally their forces because they were engaged in a never-ending struggle with intangible enemies. Understated enthusiasm curled into a tense voice when Commander Shaw spoke. "They're retracing to previously established rising points." "No." Elle said. "We can see that they are returning to our desired position." The town's ancient warehouse quarter was a labyrinth of buildings equipped with motion detectors and ready-to-fire positions, and the false echo data had guided them right there. The enemy operators were escorted into ever tinier quarters as they scurried for safety. Status of the Ghost Team: 15 enemies destroyed and 20 or more injured. There are a few more in the warehouse area. A shift in Elle's channel. Ethan, the third convoy, is engaged in what? At last, settling in, it is clear that their commander is aware of the catastrophic situation with his advance squads. Wonderful, Olivia. Go on to the last step. The town was plunged into complete darkness as the last of the lighting went out. As lightning sliced across the sky, the storm overhead grew stronger, bringing down heavy rain. Elle observed the enemy's surviving forces congregating in the warehouses through her thermal sight. They were instructed to take a defensive stance and consolidate during their training. On the contrary, they were assembling in one spot, just as she had intended. Everyone should know this. Part 4 is now underway. Once again, don't bring any weapons into Phase 4. It was completely unexpected by the remaining hostile operators. Their leadership was eliminated by the Ghost Team's snipers. Their escape routes were severed by the Steel Knights. Briggs and Olivia rallied the townsfolk to launch an unrelenting assault, which the enemy were unable to escape. However, the killing strike came from Elle. Shadowing her way through the downpour, she drew near the main warehouse, the very spot where the enemy leader had taken up his final stand. This man had been in charge of the third convoy. The one who'd been too proud to speak up because he thought he was better than everyone else. He needs to see how completely mistaken he was. With a command, she made all the units stand. This is an intimate one. On his way to the warehouse entrance, Elle saw another bolt of lightning. The war was going to start soon. As Elle stealthily made his way through the darkness, lightning flashed over the warehouse's interior. On the higher floor, her thermal imaging equipment picked up 6 distinct heat signatures. The leader of the enemy and his last remaining elite squad. Keep Overwatch running, Ghost One. Inside this building, nobody goes. Make a copy of that, Chief? Are you concerned? We are not. A labyrinth of disused machines and shipping containers made up the warehouse floor. Adequate cover, however ideal for ambush as well. Whispers from the opposing squad might be made out by Elle. They sound like they know each other. Then it hit her. The development team, Special Operations Forces members who had become mercenaries. Her earphone picked up the voice of Commander Ethan. Discovered a photo ID on their captain. Death Eater Blackwood, Marcus. In Baghdad, he was. Elle's heart sank. Her comrade's deaths had occurred on a day when Blackwood was there. Employed for an alternative contractor. Just as his involvement in the operation's failure was about to be questioned, he vanished. Thus the warehouse resounded with Blackwood's voice. Commander Winters, the renowned veteran. Trip to Baghdad was a long time ago. Reaper, that is not long enough. Have you any idea why we're here? Some of these villagers may make it through the night if we have echo. Elle shifted positions, darting between shadows. Blackwood, are you still trying to hide behind the innocent victims? Was Baghdad the same? She had been there only moments when a barrage of gunshots retaliated. You can't call these shots at random. Herding Blackwood into a kill zone was the goal of her crew. Blackwood yelled out that Baghdad was a commercial hub. Similar to this. Do you honestly believe that your small community will be able to withstand the impending threat? There was more to come after Cross. What is the place of the Ghost Team among the opposing armies? Stopped and rendered harmless. Run by the Iron Vultures, cleanup is underway. Your building contains the only remaining objectives. Elle beamed a gloomy grin. Is that audible, Ghost? You will not receive a backup. Enhanced control over the gunfire. They were becoming increasingly irritated and blundered. She was flanked by 2 operators. Nevertheless, Elle had already departed. I don't understand. Nearer now, Blackwood's voice could be heard. The organization headed by Cross wasn't the Serpent's head. Yeah, we are. Everything is contained in Echo. Regardless of the operation, contract, or hired assassin, everything is under our control with that info. With an echoey voice, Elle corrected her. There is nothing you can do. At least not at the moment. The devices that Olivia had planted earlier were activated by her. Smoke grenades were let off on the upper floor after flashbangs. Disorienting light and smoke flooded the warehouse, rendering the enemy's night vision equipment unusable. Potential dangers from outside sources to the invisible team? No way, General. The building is guarded. There are no reinforcements on their way. Taking advantage of the mayhem, Elle made her way upward. She slipped by the first operator's radar. Strikes to the temple and the throat in rapid succession. Minimalist, effective. The second one attempted to call for aid by radio, but all they got was static. All communication was cut off by the town's radio jammers, which were still operational. "The end has come, Reaper," Elle shouted. "We have lost or captured all of your men. The operation is a bust. Give up now, as if your group capitulated in Baghdad." Her intended reaction to the taunt was to become irate and clumsy. Rather, it brought about absolute clarity. Elle seemed to float through the air, unperturbed by the flickering lights and haze. Attacks with pinpoint accuracy brought down operators 3 and 4. The fifth one was able to unleash a barrage of bullets before Elle's blade sliced through his neck. Then she and Blackwood were alone. "Winters, you are aware of your issue." From behind her, he now spoke out. "Your thinking remains that of a SEAL, defending the defenseless, honor and responsibility. No longer does that apply in the real world." "He was wrong," Elle said as he turned to face him. "Yes, that is precisely correct. All you did was forget." Simultaneously, they shifted. Among the best, Blackwood was good. He landed hard, pinpoint blows. While he lacked something, Elle possessed it. Something more than just power or wealth motivated them to win. Both sides fought fiercely and narrowly. Breaking bones, blood spurted. A rib-crushing blow from Blackwood landed on her, yet Elle took it in stride and retaliated with a knee-breaking blow. Where does the status of the Ghost team stand? Between breaths, she accomplished it. "Okay, Commander, put a stop to this." Elle noticed her opening as Blackwood faltered. She had practiced this maneuver ad nauseum during her training. The one that each SEAL was taught. She proclaimed, "This is for Baghdad," before striking. Blackwood's fall caused his pupils to dilate. His final remarks were hardly audible. "What have you done? You have no idea." Elle, panting heavily, stood over him. "I do, in fact. Ethan, uploading is underway, Commander." The authentic Echo database duplicated during their pursuit of our decoy. Full rundown, including all names and procedures. This second, it is being sent to every major spy agency in the world. The tempest was slowly dissipating outside. As soon as the day rose above the town, the horrors of the night would be revealed. For the time being, though, Elle gave herself permission to find some peace in the smoke-filled warehouse. At long last, the specters of Baghdad could relax. As soon as the sun rose over the summit ridge town, the extent of the nighttime conflict became apparent. While Elle stayed outside Sullivan's diner, observing the cleanup crew's movements across the streets, federal cars started to arrive. A formal narrative was already in the works. Local law enforcement and worried people foiled a criminal takeover effort. Studying the situation, Martha emerged with a mug of coffee. "That town has seen better times." "After this, we will rebuild," Elle said. "Plus, the majority of the harm is purely aesthetic, strategic, not structural." Olivia walked over, her expression one of contented exhaustion. Finally tallied. 38 enemy operators killed, 2 scoreboards taken down, no innocent people hurt. The spectral ensemble has departed. Even Shaw's followers have reverted to their status as generic MCs. Blackwood 2, en route to a safe location. Half of the world's intelligence services reportedly want to speak with him. A ringtone could be heard on Elle's phone. "Hi, Ethan. Database issue with Echo causing havoc. The global web of mercenary organizations is unraveling. Many influential individuals are fleeing in terror." Cold War hero? Even though he had been up all night, Agent Rodriguez looked remarkably rested as he approached. Something intriguing was in Blackwood's possession that we discovered. Data pertaining to Baghdad. Mild anxiety gripped Elle. Operation that is classified, at least not at the moment. She received a thumb drive from Rodriguez. "It was my assumption that you would be interested in viewing it. This proves that your team was prefab." From that point on, Blackwood had been collaborating with Cross. "Finally, the truth is revealed," Martha pondered. With a quick reply and a discreet pocket move, Elle snatched the drive. After spending the night in a sling due to the combat, Briggs joined them. "Upcoming town council meeting this evening. Call for immediate meeting to choose new executive team. Elle grinned, and I'll take a guess. Someone mentioned Olivia, and so on. Emma, who appeared taken aback, met Briggs's serious gaze. I am? I simply own a diner. In order to save this town, who played a role in exposing corruption? Observed by Olivia. Such details are picked up on by others. There was a crackling sound coming from Elle's radio. Shaw's sound. Notable intelligence was gathered by the commander. It would appear that Blackwood's group had further regional activities. Someone should probably investigate those. Mistook the Iron Vultures for any old MC. Elle, the person replied. Yeah, we are. On the other hand, another MC may require some advice from an expert. Just as Elle was about to reply, Ethan fired off another message. Satellite imagery reveals motion close to the Canadian border, consistent with Cross's method of operation. Most likely it isn't. Martha saw that Elle was looking attentive. I can't believe you're already considering leaving, are you? Elle firmly stated no. Here we are at home. On rare occasions, nevertheless, a broader radius of protection may be necessary for the house. With a smile on her face, Olivia answered, I may require a special counselor in my capacity as sheriff. Someone who has some background in strategy and tactics. Additional legal expertise. Is this an employment offer? Seems more like a role in consulting. Quite informal. You have more than enough time to start the self-defense classes you've been discussing. A gaze around the town washed over Elle. The town belonging to her, the sanctuary she had sought out, had transformed into more than just that. A house that deserves victory. Valuable enough to warrant safeguarding. Echo 1 to the commander, her radio abruptly screeched. May have connections with operators seeking occasional contract employment if you decide to take that consulting job. Completely lawful, naturally. Without a doubt, Elle responded with a smile. They were given fresh coffee mugs by Emma. It appears that Sullivan's Diner may require an expansion of its back area. Create room for further offerings. Private gatherings. Are you already thinking about the future? Dear Martha spoke with conviction. Everyone here is thinking about the future after everything that this town has been through recently. Someone superior. Higher and higher the morning sun rose. The destruction that needed fixing was brought to light, but so was the resilience of the people who had overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. One last ding went off on Elle's phone. Hi, Ethan. Everything is confirmed by the Baghdad file. Everyone in your team will be exonerated. Fairness achieved. All right, Elle murmured it. As Elle saw her newfound family, the maternal power of Emma, the determined leadership of Olivia, and the steady reliability of Briggs, she felt a feeling she hadn't felt since before Baghdad. Calm down. However, further towns and dangers existed, as Shaw had warned. There was still more to do. Shapes were merely shifting, and for some reason, everything seemed just perfect. By the third month following the pivotal battle, Sullivan's Diner had experienced unprecedented levels of business. Martha had transformed the basement, originally a plain storage area, into a meeting spot for Elle and her growing group of friends, which she had facetiously dubbed the Situation Room. Reports on suspicious behavior along the Canadian border were reviewed by Elle as she sat at her customary booth, per Shaw's teams. Joined her with a mug of freshly brewed coffee was Olivia, who had just been sworn in as sheriff. While slipping a file over the table, Olivia announced that she had something intriguing. Are you still thinking about last week's warehouse raids? Recovered evidence connecting 3 state officials to the network that Cross had previously used. Elle pondered the loose ends. Everyone is in a state of panic ever since Echo went public. While we're on the subject of rushing, Olivia gestured toward the corner TV. Unidentified operations in Seattle apprehended a weapons dealer with ties to Cross, leading to another high-profile arrest, as shown on the news. When Elle saw the work that Ghost Team had done, he grinned. Olivia mentioned that your pals have been quite busy. Which pals? Effective law enforcement is all I can see. Briggs and Shaw, who were both looking quite serious, walked solemnly into the diner as the door chimed. Is there an issue? Elle, what do you think? Shaw set up a laptop on the table and displayed security footage. Recall that we believed Cross's operation to be solely focused on weapons? As it turns out, that was merely the cutting edge. Human trafficking routes were discovered to pass through Summit Ridge and into Canada. Briggs elaborated by saying that the same hallways were used for the shipment of weapons. It involves a number of smaller towns. The local authorities were bribed. Is this place old news to you? The images were examined by L. A pattern emerged. Others are attempting to fill the power vacuum by using the same tactics that Cross had used. By the way, how many towns are there? According to Shaw, there are at least 6, totally defenseless, little, and scattered. Similar to this one. Along with her now iconic apple pie, Martha showed up with additional coffee. It seems like someone needs to take action over that. Olivia claimed it was already happening. A task force at the federal level is recently formed. This is highly debatable and unofficial. Someone to oversee ground operations is being sought after. An eyebrow was arched by L. Allow me to make an educated guess. Who was it that you suggested? In fact, Shaw cut in. We all did, he said. In order to carry out their intricate missions, the Iron Vultures require clear orders. With familiar command, Ghost Team operates better. Being under the protection of a sheriff's special advisor is also helpful. Martha also mentioned that in addition to teaching self-defense classes, you should find something to occupy your time. It had been L who proposed the classes, encouraging self-defense among town residents, fostering self-assurance and camaraderie. At this point, 3 months had passed on the waiting list. How about this place? L, what do you think? It is still necessary to safeguard this town. It was a smile on Olivia's face. A couple items have been uncovered, and you won't be far behind anyway. Redefining home territory is all that's needed. A ringtone could be heard on L's phone. Got some progress on those border cases, Ethan. Important matter. We are prepared to take your call. She glanced at her strange relatives seated at the table. The unassuming might of Emma, the resolute leadership of Olivia, Briggs's unwavering commitment, Shaw's mastery of strategy. We are now all a part of a bigger picture. An organization that stands behind those who are helpless and cannot defend themselves. At last, Elle spoke. It seems like I need to buy more coffee. Perhaps a few sleepless evenings are in store. Martha nodded in agreement. Honey, I can already smell the coffee brewing. If you were asking, yes, my apple pie does travel nicely. Motorbikes rumbled by outside, guarding their village and getting ready for greater missions. The Steel Knights are out on patrol. Activated ghost teams lurked in the shadows, waiting for their cue to launch an attack. A former Navy SEAL found solace in helping others fight their battles in a little Summit Ridge cafe that had become so much more. Okay, Elle remarked as she opened her laptop. Please demonstrate our knowledge of these towns. Just as we assisted this one, let's aid them as well. Because it was worthwhile to engage in some conflicts. The price was justified for some causes. Some smaller communities also had to realize they weren't as defenseless as they had previously believed. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow across Summit Ridge, Elle stood on the roof of Sullivan's Diner and watched the town adapt to its new normal. People in town felt empowered to go about their daily lives as Steel Knights, and Olivia's deputies confidently patrolled the streets. Notifications of updates rang her phone. Operation success in 3 border towns reported by the Ghost Team. Federal agencies and Shaw are working together. Ethan presenting new dangers based on satellite data. More and more towns were being protected, and lives were being saved by the expanding network they had created. Emma, who was adorned with a mayor's pin on her apron and lugging 2 cups of coffee, ascended to join her. How about a penny for your ideas? According to Elle, it's all because of how much has changed. I was seeking cover when I arrived here. You, on the other hand, discovered a stronghold to defend yourself. Her police car, Olivia's, came up below. The town could now be proud of the agency under the new sheriff's leadership because she had shown herself to be more than capable. A new breed of police officers, mentored by Briggs, who was now her chief deputy, had been raised to value community safety. Calling up, Olivia obtained the most recent figures. Our consultancy services have been requested by 3 other towns. It appears that news of what transpired here is making the rounds. Armani grinned. A tiny town taking on organized crime, that was the official narrative. Contrary news, though, was making its way around the area. If you knew how to ask, there were individuals willing to help. A crackle escaped her radio. I have finished the operation at the border, Commander Ghost 1. Hostages released, package safeguarded. As expected, local authorities are claiming credit. Elle praised the effort. Rest for a while. I sense that we will soon be occupied. Martha gazed at the setting sun with a twinkle in her eye. I thought you were going out again. A little village in Idaho is open for business for a short time. It takes me back to the way things were here. Feeling threatened, facing danger, seeking an instructor to teach them self-defense, in a similar vein. Shaw, head of the Iron Vultures, appeared as rugged as a biker, even though he was wearing a federal badge as his motorcycle rumbled into view. He silently confirmed that everything was ready by nodding up at Elle. You know, Martha reflected, my herald promised that this restaurant would become the community hub, a place where neighbors could gather in safety. When he opened it, he was spot on. Sure enough, he was. Still, he had no idea it would develop into anything more. An emblem of defiance. A symbol of optimism for other neighborhoods. Ethan sent Elle one last message, and Elle's phone lighted up. According to new information, a large operation is taking shape in the Pacific Northwest. Targeted are numerous towns. Their playbook is based on Cross's old strategy. As far as Elle could tell, we still had a ways to go. Martha refuted the claim. We do it for that reason, though. Justification for your actions. Down below, the town went about its nightly business as usual. Streets that were once owned by gangsters were now safe for families to walk down. Companies might grow without worrying about extortion. More Iron Vultures were seen approaching in the distance, getting ready for their next mission. At last, Elle spoke up about what he had learnt. It has nothing to do with physical prowess. It's about having the courage to stand up, resist, and demonstrate to others that they, too, are capable. For that reason, you will persist in venturing out. Be there for other towns as they discover their own strength. A person must do it. Returning to the staircase, Martha grinned. Regardless, know that there are individuals who care about you, and that coffee is always available. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Elle studied the mountains in the distance. The other villages that required assistance, the other wars that needed to be fought, were all visible in her imagination. However, by this point, she had allies. She was well connected, had a family, and knew what she was here to do. For people who needed it most, the shy woman who had been having coffee in a diner in a tiny town had become more than just another customer. With the setting sun casting a shadow over Summit Ridge, Elle Winters couldn't help but smile. He knew that some other community was going to find out the consequences of messing with the wrong Navy SEAL. A story that doesn't end. Just like that, they transform into legendary figures that encourage others to discover their own fortitude, bravery, and resistance. And it all started in a little Summit Ridge diner, where legends were born.